The great space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than any city on Earth, made of gleaming metal and crystal that caught the light from distant suns. Inside its vast halls, beings from 47 different worlds had come together for one purpose. They were here to decide what to do about humans. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian people stood at the center of the massive council chamber. His tall, thin frame cast long shadows under the bright lights. Around him, creatures of all shapes and sizes sat in their designated seats. Some looked like giant insects with shining shells. Others were made of living crystal that sparkled when they moved. A few appeared to be floating clouds of gas held together by energy fields. Veltar held a thick datapad in his six-fingered hands. For 3 years, his people had been watching Earth. They had studied human behavior, recorded their wars, and analyzed their societies. What they found worried them deeply. Fellow beings of the Concordance, Veltar began, his voice carrying through the chamber's translation system. We have reached our decision about the species that calls itself human. The chamber fell silent. Not even the soft humming of the melodic ones could be heard. For 97 cycles, our concordance has brought peace to this galaxy, Veltar continued. We have done this by only allowing civilized species to join us. Species that understand cooperation. Species that have moved beyond primitive violence. He paused and looked around the room. Every eye, antenna, and sensor was focused on him. Humans have failed this test. A ripple of movement went through the chamber. Some aliens nodded their approval. Others made soft sounds that their translators turned into words of agreement. Veltar activated his datapad, and holographic images appeared in the air above him. The images showed scenes from Earth's history. Battles, explosions, and destruction filled the space above the council. Look at their past, he said. In just the last 100 of their years, they have fought 2 massive wars that killed millions of their own kind. They have created weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They poison their own air and water for profit. The images changed to show human cities, with their towers of metal and glass reaching toward the sky. But the beauty was spoiled by the smog and pollution that surrounded them. They are territorial creatures, added crystalline speaker Zexhai, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. Our observers report constant conflicts between their different groups. They fight over land, over resources, over ideas. They cannot even agree on how to govern themselves. More aliens spoke up. The collective mind of Antares shared data about human psychological profiles. Their emotional responses are unstable, the collective said through their speaker. They make decisions based on anger, fear, and pride instead of logic. This makes them dangerous and unpredictable. Elder Thrum of the Peaceful Stones added his concerns. We have watched them for these 3 years since first contact. In that time, they have not stopped their conflicts. Even knowing they are being judged by galactic civilization, they continue to fight among themselves. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the small observation area reserved for human representatives. She wanted to speak up, to defend her species. But the council had made it clear that humans could observe, but not participate in this decision. She watched as more evidence piled up against humanity. Crime statistics from Earth's cities. Military spending reports. Videos of protests and riots. Everything that made humans seem violent and chaotic. But there is more that concerns us, Veltar said. And new images appeared. These showed human soldiers in battle. But something was different about these scenes. Look at how they fight. Other species fight for survival, for resources, for territory. Humans fight for ideas they cannot even touch. The images showed soldiers charging into hopeless battles, knowing they would die. They showed people standing between tanks and civilians, using their bodies as shields. They will die for concepts like freedom and justice, Veltar said, his voice filled with confusion. They risk their lives for people they have never met. This level of emotional attachment makes them completely unpredictable. The vote was called. One by one, each species announced their decision. The Zephyrians voted to exclude humans. So did the Crystalline Collective, the Peaceful Stones, the Melodic Ones, the Antares Collective. Every single species said the same thing. 47 votes to exclude, announced the Chamber's computer system. 0 votes to include. The motion passes unanimously. Dr. Chen felt her heart sink. She had hoped that at least one species would see something good in humanity. But they were completely alone. Veltar stood once more. It is decided. The species known as humans are declared incompatible with galactic civilization. They will be quarantined to their home system until such time as they evolve beyond their violent nature. Of course, the formal declaration was already being prepared. Within hours, it would be transmitted to Earth's governments. Automated defense satellites would be placed around the solar system to prevent human ships from leaving. Humanity would be trapped in their own small corner of space, cut off from the vast community of galactic civilization. The quarantine will remain in place indefinitely, Veltar continued. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when they have learned to control their aggressive instincts and emotional volatility, they may be reconsidered for membership. As the council session ended and the alien representatives began to leave, Dr. Chen remained in her seat. She thought about the message she would have to send back to Earth. How do you tell an entire world that they have been rejected by the galaxy itself? The irony was not lost on her. Humans had spent centuries dreaming of meeting other intelligent life, of joining a galactic community. Now that dream had become a nightmare. They were alone in the universe not because no one else existed, but because no one else wanted them. The great doors of the council chamber closed with a sound like thunder. Dr. Chen finally stood and began the long walk back to her ship. She had to tell Earth that humanity had been judged and found wanting. They were prisoners in their own solar system, branded as too dangerous to be trusted with the stars. 6 months had passed since the verdict. Earth felt smaller now, like a prison with invisible walls made of stars. The automated defense satellites that the Galactic Council had placed around the solar system hummed with alien energy, a constant reminder that humanity was trapped. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory at the International Space Research Center, staring at screens full of data. The alien files about humanity's evaluation covered her desk, like scattered puzzle pieces. She had read through them hundreds of times, trying to understand how the galaxy's greatest minds could get everything so wrong about her species. "Still working late?" asked Admiral Rebecca Torres as she entered the lab. The head of Earth's Space Defense Initiative looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes showed the stress of the past months. "I can't stop thinking about their assessment," Sarah said, pointing to the holographic display floating above her desk. "Look at this data they collected about alien civilizations." Rebecca moved closer to examine the files. The information showed how each species in the Galactic Council had evolved. The Zephyrians had developed from hive insects that shared one mind across millions of bodies. The Crystalline Collective were beings made of living mineral that processed information without emotion. The Antares Collective had given up individual thought entirely, merging their consciousness into one giant shared brain. Every single species achieved space travel through unity, Sarah continued, either by sharing minds, suppressing emotions, or eliminating individual will completely. None of them developed as separate thinking beings like we did, so they don't understand us because we're different, Rebecca said. That's not exactly news, Sarah, but it's more than that. Sarah pulled up another display. Look at their reaction to human behavior. When they see a soldier sacrifice himself to save others, they call it emotional instability. When they see us fighting for freedom, they label it as dangerous unpredictability. Rebecca frowned as she studied the data. They see our strengths as weaknesses. Exactly. And I think that's going to be a problem. For them, not us. Before Rebecca could ask what she meant, both women's communication devices buzzed with an urgent message. Rebecca read the text, and her face went pale. "We need to get to the command center now," she said. The Earth Defense Command Center was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Technicians sat at banks of computer screens, tracking signals from across the galaxy. The main display at the front of the room showed a map of known space, with thousands of tiny lights representing star systems and alien civilizations. "What do we have?" Rebecca asked Commander Park, the duty officer. Long-range sensors picked up something at the edge of the galaxy, Park replied. Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. But that's not the strange part. The main screen changed to show the galactic rim, where the spiral arms of the Milky Way faded into empty space. Several star systems that had been glowing green just days before were now dark. 3 systems went completely silent in the past week, Park continued. No communication, no energy readings, nothing. It's like they just disappeared. Sarah moved closer to the display. What was in those systems? Colonies belonging to the Outer Rim Alliance, mining worlds, research stations, and one major population center with over 2 billion inhabitants. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. 2 billion people don't just disappear. Park nodded grimly. That's what we thought. But our deep space monitoring stations managed to catch some transmissions before the systems went dark. He activated the audio system. Computer, play transmission intercept Delta 7. Static filled the room, followed by a voice speaking in the musical language of the melodic ones. The computer's translation system converted it to English. Unknown vessels approaching. Design unlike any in our databases. They appear to be. The transmission cut to static. Play intercept Delta 8, Park commanded. This time it was a Zephyrian voice, high and rapid with panic. The defensive grid is failing. They're not using weapons. They're consuming the technology somehow. The ships are growing larger. How is that possible? Send word to the council. Tell them. Static again. The room fell silent. Sarah and Rebecca exchanged worried glances. There are more, Park said quietly. Dozens of distress signals from that region. They all end the same way. Complete silence within 48 hours. Rebecca studied the map. What does the council say about this? That's the interesting part, Park replied. According to our intelligence sources, the council is tracking this too. But they haven't shared any information with their member species. They seem to be handling it internally. Sarah looked at the pattern of dark systems on the display. Something about it bothered her, but she couldn't put her finger on what. Computer, show the progression of affected systems over time, she said. The display changed to show how the darkness had spread. First one system went dark, then 2 more nearby, then 5 more in the next wave. The pattern was methodical, deliberate. They're not random attacks, Sarah realized. Whatever this is, it's targeting specific types of civilizations. She called up the database of affected systems. Computer, show the classification data for all dark systems. The information appeared on screen. Every single lost civilization had the same characteristics: highly advanced technology, unified government structures, and peaceful societies that had been part of the galactic community for thousands of years. They're targeting exactly the kind of civilizations that make up the council, Sarah said. Rebecca understood immediately. The advanced, unified, predictable ones. And avoiding the primitive, chaotic ones, Sarah added. The kind like us. As if to confirm her theory, a new signal came through the communication system. This time it was from a human deep space exploration vessel that had been beyond the quarantine when it was established. This is Captain Morrison of the survey ship Discovery, the voice said through the static. We're in the Kepler 442 system, and we're seeing some weird stuff out here. There are these ships. I guess. They look like they're alive. Organic hulls, no obvious engines, and they're tearing apart the automated mining station like it's made of paper. The transmission paused, then continued. The strange thing is, they completely ignored our ship. We're right here in the open. But they act like we don't exist. They just keep working on the station. I've never seen anything like it. Rebecca and Sarah looked at each other. The pattern was becoming clear. Whatever was destroying advanced civilizations at the galaxy's edge, it had no interest in humans. It's like they don't see us as a threat, Rebecca said. Or maybe, Sarah replied quietly, they don't see us as worth consuming. On the main display, another star system flickered and went dark. The unknown threat was moving steadily inward, toward the galaxy's core, where the most advanced civilizations lived, toward the council worlds that had rejected humanity for being too primitive and violent. Sarah realized with growing dread that humanity's greatest weakness, the thing that had gotten them expelled from galactic society, might turn out to be their greatest strength. While the galaxy's most advanced minds tried to understand this new threat through logic and unity, the chaotic, unpredictable humans might be the only ones who could see it clearly. The galaxy was in danger, and the species they had rejected as too primitive might be their only hope. The emergency meeting in the United Nations building lasted for 3 days. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat around the massive circular table, arguing about how to respond to the crisis at the galaxy's edge. The debate had grown heated, with voices raised and fists pounded on tables. President Martinez of the Global Federation sat at the head of the table, listening to the same arguments for the 100th time. Some wanted to appeal the Council's decision, offering to change human society to meet their standards. Others demanded they try to break through the quarantine by force. "We should show them we can be peaceful," said Chancellor Okafor from the African Union. "If we change our ways, prove we can live without conflict, maybe they'll reconsider." "That's exactly what they want," argued Prime Minister Singh from the Indo-Pacific Alliance. "They want us to become like them. Give up what makes us human." "And what has being human gotten us?" shot back President Volkov from the European coalition. "Trapped in our own solar system while the galaxy burns around us." Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the observer section, watching the politicians tear each other apart. Admiral Torres was next to her, shaking her head at the chaos. "They're doing exactly what the aliens expected," Torres whispered. "Fighting among ourselves, instead of working together." Sarah had been thinking about something for weeks. An idea that seemed crazy but might be the only way forward. "What if that's not a bug but a feature?" she said. Torres looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean? What if the fact that we argue and disagree is actually our strength? The council species all think with one mind. They reach decisions through logic and consensus. But that makes them predictable." Before Torres could respond, Sarah stood up and walked to the front of the room. The arguing continued until she cleared her throat loudly. "Excuse me," she said. "I have a proposal." President Martinez looked relieved for the interruption. "Dr. Chen, please go ahead." "I think we should tell them the truth," Sarah said simply. The room fell silent. Then everyone started talking at once. "The truth about what?" demanded Chancellor Okafor. "About us. About why we fight. About what they got wrong in their evaluation." Sarah moved to the center of the room, where a holographic display could be activated. "I want to send a message to every species in the galaxy. Not an appeal or a negotiation. Just the truth about humanity." "That's insane," said President Volkov. "It would only confirm their worst fears about us." "Maybe," Sarah replied. "Or maybe it would help them understand what they're really dealing with out there." President Martinez looked interested. "What kind of message?" "Complete transparency. Our real history. Our real motivations. Our real nature. Not the sanitized version we tried to show them during first contact." Sarah activated the display and brought up images from Earth's history. "Show them why we fight. Show them what we're really fighting for." The room erupted in protests. Military officials worried about revealing strategic information. Politicians feared it would make humanity look even worse. Diplomats argued it would end any chance of future negotiations, but Admiral Torres was nodding slowly. "It might actually work," she said. "If we're going to be honest about what we are, we should be completely honest." Dr. Chen continued her explanation. "The threat at the galaxy's edge is targeting advanced, unified civilizations. The kind that think and act predictably. They ignore humans because we're chaotic and primitive. But what if chaos is exactly what the galaxy needs right now?" 3 more days of debate followed. In the end, it was President Martinez who made the decision. "We'll do it," he announced. "Full transparency. Dr. Chen will prepare the message." 1 week later, President Martinez stood in front of the cameras in the UN General Assembly Hall. Every major government leader on Earth was present. The message would be broadcast on all galactic communication frequencies, reaching every inhabited system in the galaxy. To all species of the Galactic Concordance, Martinez began, his voice steady and clear. We have received your judgment of humanity, and we understand your fears. You have concluded that we are too violent, too chaotic, too emotional to join your civilized society. He paused, looking directly into the camera. You are not wrong about what we are, but you have misunderstood why we are this way. The display screens around the hall activated, showing images from human history. But these weren't the scenes of war and destruction the Council had focused on. These showed the context, the reasons, the human stories behind the conflicts. Yes, we fight, Martinez continued. But look at why we fight. We fight when others cannot fight for themselves. We fight when evil threatens the innocent. We fight not because we love violence, but because we love something more than our own safety. The images showed human soldiers storming the beaches at Normandy to liberate Europe from fascism. They showed firefighters running into burning buildings to save strangers. They showed ordinary people standing in front of tanks to protect protesters. You achieved peace by unifying your thoughts and suppressing individual will, Martinez said. We achieved peace by learning that our differences make us stronger when we stand together. You fear our emotions, but our emotions are what drive us to sacrifice everything for others. New images appeared. Humans in disasters helping each other regardless of race, religion, or nationality. Medical workers staying at their posts during plagues, teachers protecting their students with their own bodies during attacks. You say we are unpredictable, and you are right. We are unpredictable because we value things that logic cannot measure. Honor, loyalty, love, justice. We will die for ideas you cannot see or touch. The tone of the message shifted as Martinez addressed the current crisis. You have quarantined us because you see us as dangerous. You are correct, but not to you, to those who would harm the innocent. And right now, something is coming for your peaceful civilizations that your unity and logic cannot comprehend. The display showed the latest data from the galaxy's edge. More systems had gone dark, and the pattern was accelerating. This threat targets exactly the kind of civilized, predictable societies you have built. It avoids chaos because chaos is harder to understand and defeat. Martinez leaned forward, his voice growing more intense. When this enemy reaches your core worlds, your logical responses will fail. Your unified strategies will be anticipated and countered. Your peaceful nature will be used against you. The final part of the message was the most important. We do not ask you to accept us into your society. We do not ask you to change your judgment. We ask only that you remember us when your perfect logic fails you. Remember that somewhere in this galaxy, there are beings who fight not because it makes sense, but because it is right. The broadcast ended with something the Council had never seen before. The complete military and tactical history of humanity, not just the wars, but the strategies, the innovations, the impossible victories achieved through stubborn refusal to accept defeat. As the transmission ended, Martinez looked around the room at the world leaders who had supported this desperate gamble. Now we wait, he said. The galaxy's response was immediate. Outrage from the Council species at humanity's arrogance. Demands for immediate punishment. Some called it propaganda. Others called it a threat. But in the outer systems, where the darkness was spreading, a few voices began to speak differently. Colonial administrators who had watched their peaceful defenses fail started to study the human data. Military commanders whose logical strategies had proven useless began to wonder if there might be another way. The message had been sent. Humanity had shown the galaxy exactly what they were. Chaotic, emotional, unpredictable fighters who would never stop as long as there was something worth protecting. Now they would learn if the galaxy was ready to listen. The Council's emergency session was unlike any in their 1,000-year history. The great chamber on Harmony's edge buzzed with angry voices, as representatives from dozens of species demanded action against humanity's insulting message. Ambassador Veltar stood at his podium, his tall frame trembling with rage. This primitive species dares to threaten us with their propaganda. They mock our achievements and claim their violence is somehow noble. "They must be silenced immediately," declared crystalline speaker HFY, her crystal body flashing with angry red light. "Their message pollutes the minds of our young civilizations with thoughts of war and chaos." The Antares collective speaker nodded in agreement. "Our analysis shows the message was designed to spread doubt about our peaceful methods. It is psychological warfare at its most basic level." Elder Thrum of the Peaceful Stones rumbled his deep voice through the chamber. "I propose we expand the quarantine. Not just to prevent them from leaving their system, but to block all communication as well. Let them scream their violent words into the void where no one can hear them." The debate continued for hours. Each species took turns condemning humanity's message and proposing punishments. Some wanted to destroy Earth's communication satellites. Others suggested sending a military force to teach humans proper respect for their betters. But as they argued, something happened that would change everything. The chamber's emergency alert system activated with a sound like screaming wind. The main display lit up with urgent messages from across the galaxy. The arguing stopped as every being in the chamber turned to look. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Veltar demanded. The chamber's AI system responded in its calm, emotionless voice. "Priority 1 alert from the Zephyrian hegemony. The Altair Prime system is under attack by unknown forces. All defensive measures have failed. Estimated time until system falls: 6 hours. A chill ran through the chamber. Altair Prime was not some distant colony world. It was the Zephyrian hegemony's second most important system, home to 3 billion souls and protected by their most advanced defensive technology. "That's impossible," Veltar said, his voice suddenly much quieter. "Our defenses at Altair Prime could stop any known threat." "Incoming transmission from Hegemony Defense Command," the AI announced. The chamber's main screen activated, showing Admiral Cathara's face. The normally composed Zephyrian officer looked terrified. Her large eyes were wide with panic, and her usually perfect posture had collapsed. "Council members," she said, her voice shaking, "we need immediate assistance. The enemy has broken through our outer defenses in less than 2 hours. We've never seen anything like them." The view changed to show the space around Altair Prime. Where once there had been elegant Zephyrian defense stations, now there were strange, organic-looking ships. They moved like living things, flowing and shifting as they consumed everything in their path. "They don't attack our technology," Cathara continued. "They eat it. They absorb our weapons and use them against us. Our defensive grid is actually making them stronger." The Crystalline Collective's representative leaned forward. "What about your tactical computers? Surely your battle analysis systems can find a weakness." Cathara's laugh was bitter and desperate. "That's the worst part. They can predict everything we do. Every strategy we try, every formation we use, they counter it before we even complete the maneuver. It's like they can read our minds." The transmission cut to static as another part of the Altair system's communication network was destroyed. The chamber fell silent. The same beings who had been demanding punishment for humans just minutes before now sat in stunned disbelief. "How is this possible?" whispered the Antares collective speaker. "The Zephyrians have the most advanced military in the galaxy." Elder Thrum's stone body seemed to shrink as the truth sank in. "Advanced, yes, but also predictable. They fight like they do everything else, with perfect unity and logical precision." As if summoned by his words, another emergency alert filled the chamber. This time it was from the Crystalline Collective's home system. "Unknown vessels approaching Crystal Heart," the message reported. They matched the description from Zephyrian reports. "Beginning defensive procedures." Speaker HFY stood abruptly. "I must return to my people immediately. Council is dismissed." But before she could leave, another message arrived, then another, then dozens more. The enemy wasn't just targeting 1 or 2 systems anymore. They were attacking across a 1,000-light-year front, hitting multiple species simultaneously. And every single target had the same characteristics: advanced technology, unified command structures, and predictable tactical responses. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in Earth's diplomatic office on Harmony's Edge, monitoring the Council's communications. What she saw filled her with dread. but also with a grim satisfaction. Everything she had predicted was coming true. Admiral Torres joined her as the reports flooded in. "It's happening exactly like we thought it would," she said grimly. "They're targeting the most advanced, most unified civilizations first. And ignoring the primitive, chaotic ones," Sarah added. "Look at this pattern data." The display showed the enemy's attack routes. They were bypassing dozens of less advanced worlds, focusing entirely on council species, with their advanced technology and unified governments. "They adapt to whatever they face," Sarah continued, reading the tactical reports. "The more advanced and organized the defense, the faster they learn to counter it. But chaos confuses them." A new transmission came through from the Melodic One's home system. Their beautiful, harmony-based civilization was under attack, and their leaders were singing in harmonious despair as their perfect musical defenses were turned against them. "They're consuming our songs," the transmission wailed. "They take our music and twist it into weapons. How do we fight an enemy that uses our greatest strength against us?" Admiral Torres shook her head. "They can't. That's the point. These species achieved peace by eliminating unpredictability. They made themselves perfect targets. As the hours passed, the reports grew worse. System after system fell to the strange organic ships. The peaceful stone's meditation-based defenses crumbled when the enemy learned to disrupt their mental harmony. The Antares Collective's shared consciousness became a liability when the enemy figured out how to attack their mental links directly. By the end of the day, 12 major star systems had gone completely dark. Billions of beings were dead or missing, and the enemy was accelerating toward the galaxy's core. In the council chamber, the remaining representatives sat in stunned silence. All their arguments about human primitive violence seemed foolish now. Their perfect, logical, unified civilizations were being systematically destroyed by something they couldn't understand or predict. It was Veltar who finally broke the silence. His voice was small and defeated as he spoke. "The humans. In their message. They warned us this would happen." Elder Thrum's stone body rumbled with what might have been agreement. "They said our unity made us vulnerable. That our predictability was a weakness." Speaker Zexhi's crystal form had dulled to a pale gray. "They offered to help us, and we called it propaganda." The emergency alerts continued to sound as more systems fell. The pattern was clear now. Everything the galaxy had considered, civilized and advanced, was exactly what made them easy prey for this enemy. In her office, Sarah Chen watched the destruction spread and felt sick. She had been right about the threat, but being right brought no satisfaction when billions were dying. "We have to do something," she told Admiral Torres. "What can we do? We're still quarantined. Even if we wanted to help, we're trapped in our own solar system." As if in answer to her words, Sarah's communication console chimed with an incoming priority message. The sender was Admiral Cathera of the Zephyrian Hegemony, and she was calling Earth directly. "Dr. Chen." The Admiral's voice was barely a whisper. "We need to talk." Sarah looked at Torres, who nodded grimly. The galaxy was finally ready to listen to the violent, chaotic species they had rejected. But Sarah wondered if it was already too late. Admiral Cathara's face filled the communication screen, her normally proud features marked by exhaustion and desperation. Behind her, the bridge of her command ship was in chaos, with alarms blaring and crew members working frantically at damaged control stations. "Dr. Chen," she said, her voice breaking the 1,000-year protocol of the Galactic Council. "My people are dying. Our fleets are being destroyed faster than we can deploy them. We need your help." Sarah looked at Admiral Torres, who had joined her for this unprecedented conversation between quarantined humanity and the galaxy that had rejected them. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" Torres replied. "6 months ago, you declared us too dangerous to exist in civilized space." Cathara flinched but pressed on. "We were wrong. About everything. These creatures, they call themselves the Devourers, and they're like nothing we've ever faced. They adapt to our strategies before we can implement them. They turn our own technology against us. Our unity makes us predictable, and our predictability makes us dead." Through the static-filled transmission, Explosions could be seen outside Cathara's ship. The organic enemy vessels moved like living nightmares, their surfaces rippling and changing as they consumed Zephyrian warships. Our greatest strength has become our greatest weakness, Cathara continued. We think alike, fight alike, die alike. But you humans, you're different. You're chaotic, unpredictable, maybe chaotic enough to confuse them. Torres leaned forward. Even if we wanted to help, we're still quarantined. Your council's defense satellites would destroy any human ship that tried to leave the solar system. The quarantine is hereby lifted by emergency authority, Cathara said quickly. I'm transmitting the deactivation codes now, please. We have perhaps days before they reach the core systems. Within hours, every human military vessel in the solar system was racing toward the battle zone. Admiral Torres commanded the flagship Defiance, leading a fleet of ships that had been designed for Earth's own conflicts, but would now face an enemy from beyond the stars. The human approach to the crisis was everything the aliens had feared, and everything they now desperately needed. While alien commanders held careful strategy meetings and developed logical battle plans, human captains made snap decisions based on intuition and experience. Captain James Morrison of the cruiser Relentless was the first to engage the enemy directly. His tactical approach would have horrified any alien military academy. All ships, scatter formation, he ordered over the communication channel. No patterns, no coordination. Every captain fight your own battle. The Devourers had been expecting another unified fleet with predictable movements. Instead, they found dozens of ships moving in seemingly random directions, each one responding to the battle differently. When the enemy adapted to one human ship's tactics, it couldn't use that adaptation against the others, because no two human commanders fought the same way. Captain Sarah Kim used aggressive frontal attacks while Captain Chen employed hit-and-run guerrilla tactics. Commander Rodriguez specialized in defensive fighting while Lieutenant Colonel Barnes preferred desperate flanking maneuvers that should have been impossible. For the first time since the invasion began, the Devourers seemed confused, but the human advantage went deeper than just unpredictable tactics. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything for others that the enemy couldn't comprehend. When Devourer ships surrounded the evacuation transports fleeing from the Crystalline Collective's homeworld, Captain Morrison made a decision that defied all military logic. He ordered the Relentless to ram the largest enemy vessel, knowing his ship would be destroyed. Why? The Devourers seemed to ask through their actions, pulling back in confusion. By every rational calculation, Morrison should have retreated to preserve his valuable warship. Instead, he gave his life to save alien civilians he had never met. The same pattern repeated across a dozen battlefields. Human crews stayed behind to cover retreats when they should have fled. They charged impossible odds to buy time for evacuations. They sacrificed their ships to destroy enemy vessels that posed no direct threat to humanity. The Devourer's adaptive systems couldn't process this behavior. How do you counter an enemy that acts against their own self-interest? How do you predict the actions of beings who choose death over logical survival? But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their unpredictability or their willingness to sacrifice. It was their refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was the only logical outcome. The final battle came at the galaxy's heart, where the massive Devourer mothership had emerged from wherever they originated. It was a creature the size of a moon, bristling with weapons and technology absorbed from 100 conquered civilizations. The combined alien fleets, what remained of them, attacked in careful formation with their best remaining ships. The mothership adapted to their assault within minutes, turning their own weapons against them and sending them fleeing in defeat. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien retreat through the view screen. Around her, the few remaining human ships held their position. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from the mothership. They're offering to spare Earth if we withdraw immediately." Torres looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew, young men and women who had volunteered to fight for people who had rejected them. They all knew they were about to die. "Signal to all human vessels," she said calmly. "Ignore the surrender demand. All ships, attack pattern 001. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said quietly, "Pattern 001 is a suicide run. We'll never survive getting that close to something that size." "I know," Torres replied. "But sometimes the right thing to do is the stupid thing to do." The Defiance led the charge toward the massive mothership, followed by every remaining human vessel. They weren't following any logical plan or calculated strategy. They were simply flying straight at an enemy that could destroy them easily. The Devourers tried to adapt to the human attack, but there was nothing to adapt to. The humans weren't using tactics or strategy. They were just flying forward, shooting everything they had, and refusing to stop. Torres felt the ship shake as enemy fire tore through the hull. Around her, control stations exploded, and crew members fell. But they kept flying forward. "Admiral," her engineer reported, "the reactor's been hit. We've got maybe 2 minutes before containment fails." "Then we make those 2 minutes count," Torres said. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Torres. It's been an honor serving with you. Give them everything you've got." The Defiance slammed into the mothership's hull just as its reactor went critical. The explosion tore a massive hole in the alien vessel's side, causing cascade failures throughout its organic systems. But more importantly, it proved something to the watching galaxy. In her final transmission, Torres had spoken words that would be remembered forever. "Sometimes, you have to be willing to do the wrong thing for the right reasons." The mothership died, taking most of the Devourer fleet with it. The remaining enemy vessels, deprived of their central intelligence, scattered into empty space. The galaxy was saved. But the cost had been enormous. Almost every human ship that participated in the final battle was destroyed. Thousands of the best and bravest humans had died to save the same species that had rejected them. At the memorial service held on Harmony's Edge 1 month later, every species in the galaxy sent representatives. The Galactic Council had been reformed, with new principles that incorporated both logical planning and what they now called human chaos theory. Ambassador Veltar, somehow still alive after his homeworld's near destruction, stood before the memorial wall bearing the names of fallen human heroes. "We called them primitive," he said to the assembled crowd. "We said they were too violent, too emotional, too unpredictable for civilized society. We were right about what they were, but we understood nothing about why they were that way." He turned to face the crowd, which included Dr. Sarah Chen, now appointed as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. "They fight not because they love war, but because they love peace enough to die for it. They are unpredictable because they value things we cannot measure. Honor, sacrifice, love. They saved us not because we deserved it, but because they believe all life is worth protecting." The ceremony ended with the reading of Admiral Torres's final message, broadcast to the entire galaxy. "We are chaotic not because we are broken, but because we are free. We are violent not because we are evil, but because we care too much to let evil win. And we fight not because it is logical, but because it is right." The galaxy was healing now, protected by fleets that combined alien precision with human unpredictability. The quarantine satellites around Earth had been dismantled and replaced with the galaxy's largest shipyards, where human and alien engineers worked together to build vessels that could defend against any threat. And somewhere in the void between stars, monitoring stations kept watch for new dangers, knowing that whatever came next, the galaxy now had protectors who would fight not because it made sense, but because someone had to. Dr. Chen stood at the window of her new office on Harmony's Edge, looking out at the stars. The human ships moving through space no longer flew alone. They were escorted by alien vessels, whose crews had learned that sometimes the best way to achieve victory was to embrace a little chaos. The Council had learned that humanity's greatest flaw was also their greatest strength, and the galaxy was stronger for it.